Every morning starts the same way. I wake up at dawn, look at the empty half of the bed, and realize that Rose is gone. 5 years have passed, and I still reach for her pillow with my hand. My name is Oliver Wainwright. I'm 75 years old, and I live alone in a 2-story house on Willow Street in Wapeton. The same house where Rose and I raised our only son, Lucas. A house that now seems too big and empty. The morning ritual is unchanged. Oatmeal on water, blood pressure pills, a mug of coffee, and a newspaper. Paper, not electronic. At my age, it's hard to get used to these newfangled tablets and smartphones, even though I've been an electronics whiz all my life, 43 years as an electrical engineer at the city's power plant. "Good morning, Mrs. Greenwood," I nod to my neighbor, who's walking her pug. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" "Good morning, Mr. Wainwright," she says without stopping. The neighbors say hello, but they don't talk. Everyone knows that old man Wainwright has a son who hardly ever visits his father. In a small town, everyone knows everything, even things I don't know myself. I go back into the house, wash the cup, wipe it with a towel, and put it exactly where it was yesterday and the day before. Order helps keep from going crazy with loneliness. There are pictures hanging on the wall in the living room. The biggest one is of me and Rose's wedding. Me in a black suit, her in a white dress, both young and happy. Next to that is Lucas's high school graduation. Next is his college, a picture of us together in the workshop where I taught him how to solder circuits. Probably the last picture of him genuinely smiling in my presence. The photo of his wedding to Abigail hangs separately. They are a beautiful couple, what can I say? Lucas inherited my gray eyes and stubborn chin, but his hair is brown like Rose's. Abigail is a slender blonde with impeccable posture and a keen eye. She works as a lawyer for some big company, always impeccably dressed and combed even when she stops by for 5 minutes to say they can't make it to Sunday lunch again. The family dinners Rose used to have every Sunday have turned into rare and strained gatherings where everyone talks about the weather and politics, avoiding looking each other in the eye. The last time they came was 3 months ago, for my birthday. They brought a tie I'll never wear and a bottle of wine I can't drink because of my medication. We sat there for exactly an hour, always looking at the clock. "Dad, we'd love to stay longer, but Lilith has piano lessons," Lucas said, even though I knew for a fact that his granddaughter's lessons were on Tuesdays, not Sundays. Lilith, my only granddaughter, who is now 8 years old, blonde-haired like her mother but with Wainwright eyes. An inquisitive and lively little girl who I see less often than I'd like. I've tried to bond with her. I made her a birdhouse, then a dollhouse with working light bulbs, even mastered the damn smartphone so I could send her funny pictures of kittens. But every time I offer to take Lilith fishing or to the park, Abigail finds a reason to say no. "Oliver, she's allergic to pollen," she says, though I've never seen her sneeze or cough. Or, "We signed her up for an extra math class. You know, there's so much competition in good schools these days." But the real reason is simple. They think I'm a man with outdated views, a dinosaur, a relic of the past, someone who might have the wrong influence on a child. One day I overheard Abigail saying on the phone, "Can you imagine? He told Lilith that girls can be engineers too." It's like it's the 20th century, like I'm not a lawyer myself and don't know what women can do. She didn't understand at all. I wasn't telling my granddaughter that women, too, can be engineers, as if that were some kind of condescension. I was telling her about Edith Clark, who back in 1926 patented a graphing calculator for solving problems in power lines. About the women engineers who worked shoulder to shoulder with me. About how proud I was that my granddaughter was interested in science, but Abigail only heard what she wanted to hear. After that incident, the gaps between Lilith's visits became even longer. Sometimes I think it's my own fault. Maybe I was too hard on Lucas when he was a kid. Maybe I worked too much, missed too many school plays and baseball games. Rose always said I was too demanding, that not everyone should love physics and math as much as I did. But I wanted my son to have the best education, the best opportunities. I didn't force an engineering profession on him. He chose to become a technical writer. And I was proud of him. I really was. Even when he didn't follow in my footsteps. When did the relationship start to deteriorate? After he got married? Or earlier, when he left for college and came back with new friends and new ideas? Or even earlier when he was a teenager and we fought over every little thing? I can't tell now where the cause and the effect are. On Wednesday, I decided to visit him at his office. Just like that, no call. I brought a homemade pie I'd made from Rose's recipe. The receptionist looked at me in surprise when I identified myself as Lucas Wainwright's father. "Mr. Wainwright is in a meeting," she said, glancing at my old-fashioned tweed jacket. "He won't be free until 5. You can keep this," she nodded at the pie, "and I'll tell him you stopped by." I left the pie and left. Lucas didn't call back that day or the next. Thursday, I called him myself. Abigail answered the phone. "Oliver," she sounded impatient. "Lucas is really busy right now. He had a deadline at work." "I just wanted to see if he liked the pie," I said. A pause. "What pie?" I didn't say anything, but in that moment I realized that my pie was probably going straight to the trash. It's Saturday. I spent the morning as usual. Breakfast, newspaper, walk to the park and back. The day promised to be as empty as the hundreds of days before it, but that all changed when the phone rang. I didn't pick up right away. Few people call my home number, usually telemarketers or automated alerts from the clinic. But today, I answered on the third ringtone. "Dad, it's me." Lucas's voice sounded strained. "Are you busy? I wanted to ask you something." My heart sped up. Lucas had called me for the first time in a long time. "Sure, son. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," he answered quickly. "I just wanted to check on that old fishing rod. Remember the one we took to Cadillac Lake? Do you still have it?" "That's a strange question. We haven't been fishing together in 20 years. "Yeah, it should be in the garage somewhere." "Why?" "No reason. Elliot, a colleague of mine, wants to teach his son to fish and he doesn't have any gear." I was thinking. "Sure, I'll look for it," I said happily. "Why don't you come by tomorrow? I'll cook something for lunch. Or we can look together. I'm not sure which drawer it's in." Silence on the phone. "Actually, I was thinking maybe you could just tell me where it is and then I swallowed my disappointment. "Okay, son. I'll look for her and call you back." We talked a little more about nothing, and he was about to hang up when I heard another voice in the background. "Lucas, don't forget to ask Mr. Gilmore about the corporate party. He's called twice." Abigail's voice, sharp and demanding. Yeah, I'll call him right now," Lucas answered, not into the phone, but to his wife. "Dad, I gotta go. Business." "What's this corporate thing?" I asked, trying to keep the conversation going. Pause. "Oh, it's nothing special. An annual company event," he replied nonchalantly. "Next Friday." "Sounds interesting." "Uh-huh. Listen, I really gotta go. I'll call you back about the fishing rod." Before I could answer, he hung up. Something in his voice made me wary. This faux nonchalance like the corporate party was really nothing special. Lucas had never been good at hiding his excitement. Half an hour later, the phone rang again. This time I picked it up immediately, hoping it was Lucas again, but it was a misdialed combination. A male voice asked for some Jennifer, apologized, and hung up. The day stretched on slowly. I searched for fishing line in the garage, going through boxes of old stuff, immersing myself in memories. The photo albums Rose had so carefully signed. Lucas's school projects I'd saved. His first calculator, which I fixed when Lucas accidentally dropped it in the sink of water. Toward evening, I turned on the TV to fill the house with at least some sounds. I switched channels without interest until I settled on the local news. And then I saw him, Lucas. He stood in front of the camera in a sleek blue suit, confidently answering the reporter's questions. "A new series of technical manuals that will make sophisticated technology accessible to ordinary users," he was saying. Our company has always strived to. I turned up the volume. And we are pleased to announce that Lucas Wainwright has received a prestigious industry award for his innovative approach to technical documentation. The award ceremony will be held at our annual corporate event next Friday. So there you have it. Not just an annual event. My son is getting an award, an important award, and he told me it was no big deal. The phone rang again. This time I took my time answering it, still staring at the TV screen where they were showing interviews with other employees of the company. "Hello," I said at last. "Mr. Wainwright?" came an unfamiliar female voice. "This is Patricia Thompson from Dr. Murphy's office. I'm calling to remind you of your appointment on Monday at 4:30. "Yes, thank you, I remember," I replied absent-mindedly. Hanging up the phone, I looked at the screen again, but the story had already changed to the weather report. Nevertheless, what I heard was enough. My son is receiving an important award and he didn't even tell me about it. Didn't invite me to the ceremony. I learned of his accomplishment by accident from the local news. First I felt resentment, then anger. Then came a decision. I'm going to find that fishing pole. I'm going to call Lucas. And when he comes to get it, if he does, I'll ask him directly about the corporate event. Why didn't he tell me? Why didn't he invite me? And maybe, just maybe, I'll go to the event myself, with or without an invitation. After all, I am his father. I have a right to be proud of my son, even if he doesn't want me around. I found the fishing rod in the farthest corner of the garage, behind the boxes of Christmas decorations Rose and I have collected over the years. It was old, but still in good condition. I wiped it down with a rag, remembering our trips to Cadillac Lake with Lucas. He was about 10 years old, so excited about every fish he caught, even the smallest ones. Where did that time go? When did that wall between us grow? All night I was spinning in bed, thinking about the upcoming conversation with my son. What would I tell him? How would I ask him about the corporate party so it wouldn't look like I was spying on him? After all, I just happened to see the news. Any father would be proud of such an accomplishment for his son and would want to be there for the award. In the morning, I called Lucas on his cell phone. He didn't pick up. I left a message. "Found a fishing rod. Call me when you can. Short, no pressure." Rose always said I put pressure on people, especially Lucas. But I never wanted pressure. I just wanted the best for my only son. Lucas called back close to lunchtime, his voice sounding hurried. "Hey, Dad, got your message. Can I stop by tonight around 18? My heart beat faster. "He's coming tonight. We'll talk." "Sure, son. I'll be home." "Great," he said. "Just for a little while, Abigail and I have plans tonight. Of course it won't be long. When has it ever been otherwise?" "No problem. Your fishing rod's waiting for you." After the call, I started fussing around the house. I dusted, even though I'd done it yesterday, made sandwiches, brewed fresh tea. As if I were preparing for a royal visit, I chuckled to myself. At 15 to 6, I was already sitting at the window, staring out at the road. Lucas had arrived at 18:00 sharp, a punctuality he'd inherited from me. His silver sedan was parked neatly outside the house. I noticed that he sat in the car for a few seconds before he got out, as if gathering his wits. "Hey, Dad," Lucas said when I opened the door. He didn't hug me, just nodded and walked into the house. He was wearing a navy blue suit, probably straight from work. "Come in. I made sandwiches," I said, trying to sound casual. "Thanks, but I'm not hungry." He looked around the living room as if searching for something. "So, where's that fishing rod?" I brought it from the garage, wrapped in an old cloth. "Here you go. It's a little dusty, but overall in good condition. Do you remember when we went to the lake? You caught a bass about the size of a—" "Yeah, I remember," he interrupted me. "Thanks, Dad. That'll be a big help to Elliot." He took the rod and headed for the door, clearly in a hurry to leave. "Wait," I said. "Why don't you have some tea? I wanted to ask you something." Lucas sighed but stopped. Okay, but just make it quick, I'm really in a hurry. We sat down at the kitchen table. I poured the tea into cups, trying to formulate how to start the conversation. I saw you on TV yesterday, I said at last. On the local news. Something about an award? Lucas tensed, his fingers clutching the cup. Oh, that. Yeah, the company won an industry award for a series of technical manuals. But the news said you were the one who won the award for innovation. He wrinkled his nose. It's just a formality. It's a team effort. You could have told me. I tried to make my voice sound interested rather than resentful. I'd be happy for you. Dad, it's not as important as they make it sound. But the awards are at that corporate party you mentioned, next Friday. He looked at me carefully. Why do you ask? I decided to be blunt. I'd like to come, Lucas, to support you, to rejoice in your success. His face changed, not just tense, but something between horror and anger. No, he cut him off. This is a private event. It's for company employees and their spouses only. I'm sure they'll make an exception for the honoree's father, I insisted. I could call them, and no. His voice got higher. You don't understand, Dad. This isn't a regular family celebration. This is a business event with important clients, with management. There's going to be a certain, atmosphere. And I won't fit in? I asked bluntly. Lucas looked away. That's not what I meant. Yes, I felt the bitterness rising inside me. You're ashamed of me, of your father. You think I'll embarrass you in front of your peers? That I'm so backward and clumsy? It's not that. Then what is it? I raised my voice even though I promised myself I'd stay calm. Explain to me why a son doesn't want to see his father at an important event? Lucas stood up abruptly, the tea from his cup spilling out onto the table. Do you want to know the truth? All right. Yes, I'm afraid you'll embarrass me. You'll start telling your stories from the last century, your conspiracy theories about modern technology, your outdated views on everything from politics to parenting. I was stunned by his sudden outburst. Lucas, you're going to embarrass me at corporate, he was practically screaming. You're going to pry into my business. You're going to ask inappropriate questions of my coworkers. You're just going to be yourself, and that's enough. His words hit me like a slap in the face. Myself. That's the problem. Myself. Not what I do, but who I am. I understand, I said quietly, suddenly feeling tired. You don't need me there. Lucas took a deep breath, clearly trying to calm down. Dad, don't get me wrong. This just isn't the kind of event where... It's okay, I interrupted him. Don't explain. I got it. He looked at his watch. I should get going. Abigail's waiting. I walked him to the door. He turned at the last moment. Thanks for the fishing rod. Sorry about the outburst. Let's just leave it at that, okay? The door closed behind him, and I was left alone with spilled tea and a bitter taste in my mouth. Lucas's words had been rolling around in my head all night. You're just going to be yourself, and that's enough. Am I really that awful? So unacceptable to the modern world that my own son is ashamed of me. I pulled out my photo albums this morning and started flipping through the pages, trying to figure out when it all went wrong. Here's Lucas, a 3-year-old on my shoulders, squealing with delight. Here he is, 10 years old, showing me his science project, an electrical circuit he put together himself. I was so proud of him then. Here's his high school graduation. He's smiling, holding his diploma, and I'm standing next to him with my hand on his shoulder. And here are the first signs of estrangement, a college picture of Lucas standing with his new friends. They all look so fashionable, so progressive, with their unusual hairstyles and confident smiles. And at the side, a little out of focus, Rose and I are standing there, like outsiders, like we're from another era. Maybe it's really about my looks. Rose always said I was too stubborn, too principled. The world is changing, Oliver, and you're stuck in your principles like a fly in amber. What's so terrible about my views? I believe in honest labor, in responsibility, in respect for elders. I believe there are certain rules and regulations that make society stable. Is that so scary? Yes, perhaps I am skeptical of some newfangled ideas. I don't understand why children nowadays are not taught to write by hand, why everyone is stuck in their phones instead of live communication. I don't understand why young people think they are experts in everything without any experience. But does that make me a monster? A person who shouldn't be shown to the public? I remembered our last serious conversation with Lucas while Rose was still alive. We discussed Lilith's upbringing, and I'd had the temerity to say that I thought modern methods were too lenient, that children needed boundaries and discipline. "You don't understand anything about modern developmental psychology, Dad," Lucas had said then. "Your methods are half a century out of date." "And you read too many of those fancy parenting books," I replied. "In my time, children were raised without any psychologists, and nothing grew up normal people." "In your day," he mocked. "That's why a whole generation is seeing therapists, because of the harsh upbringing methods of your time." That conversation ended with Lucas slamming the door and Rose chiding me for never listening to others, for always being sure I was right. Maybe she was right. Maybe I really am too stubborn, too rigid in my judgments. But is that a reason to be ashamed of your own father? I stood up and looked at myself in the mirror. Gray hair, wrinkles around my eyes, an old-fashioned sweater I'd been wearing for about 10 years. Nothing special, just a regular old man. What was so shameful about me? Sitting down at my computer, I found the website of the company where Lucas works. There was an announcement about an upcoming corporate event, Annual Technical Communications Innovation Awards. The venue is the conference room at the Riverview Hotel in downtown Wahpeton, starting at 19 o'clock next Friday. I wrote down the information on a piece of paper and put it in my desk drawer. Haven't decided what to do with it yet. All day, I hadn't found myself in a place to be. Lucas's words wouldn't leave my mind. I tried to distract myself by going to the store, going to the library, even sitting in the park, watching the kids on the playground. But my thoughts kept returning to our conversation. In the evening, Mrs. Greenwood, my neighbor, called. "Mr. Wainwright, could you check my fuse tomorrow? I think there's something wrong with the wiring in the bathroom." "Of course, Elizabeth," I replied. "I'll come by in the morning." "You're a real treasure," she said. "I don't know what I would have done without your help." That simple conversation lifted my spirits a little. At least someone needed me, someone useful. At dinner, I turned on the TV just to fill the silence. It was showing some modern comedy where all the characters were talking too fast and laughing at jokes I didn't understand. It only reinforced my feeling that I was really from another time. Turning off the TV, I sat down in my favorite chair with a book, but I couldn't concentrate on the text. My thoughts kept coming back to Lucas's words and the upcoming corporate party, and then it hit me. I'll read a few books about modern technology, about the latest trends. I'm going to learn modern slang. I'm going to watch those movies and TV shows that everyone's talking about. I'll prove to Lucas that I'm not the dinosaur he thinks I am. I spent the next few days immersed in learning about the modern world. I ordered books online, watched YouTube videos about the latest technology, even signed up for one of those social networking sites, though I never understood what it was for. By Thursday evening, I felt overloaded with information, but still underprepared. And what difference does it make? Even if I learned all the terms and kept up with all the trends, it wouldn't change the fact that Lucas was ashamed of me. Me, not my knowledge or lack thereof. On Friday morning, with the corporate event exactly 1 week away, I made a decision. I would go to the event. Not to embarrass Lucas, not to get back at him for saying hurtful things, but to prove to myself, first and foremost, that I wasn't some shameful secret that needed to be hidden from society. I took my best suit out of the closet, Took it to the dry cleaners. I bought a new shirt and tie not too fancy, but not as old-fashioned as the ones I had. Went to the barber shop and cut my hair and beard, prepared like a battle. In a way, it was a battle, for my right to be a father to my son without shame or hiding. Sunday night, with 5 days left until the corporate party, I thought it over again. Maybe Lucas was right. Maybe I really wouldn't fit into that atmosphere, would only make things awkward and ruin his big moment. But another voice inside me, the stubborn voice that Rose had criticized so often, said, "You're his father. You have a right to be there. If not for him, then for yourself." On Monday, I went to see Dr. Murphy. Just a routine checkup, nothing serious. He asked how I was feeling. "Physically fine," I replied. "Mentally, more difficult." Dr. Murphy was about my age and we'd known each other for years. "Is it still hard without Rose?" he asked sympathetically. "Not just that," I sighed. "Trouble with my son. He's ashamed of me." I told him about our conversation, about the upcoming corporate party, about my decision to go no matter what. "Do you think I'm doing something stupid?" I asked at the end. Dr. Murphy looked at me thoughtfully. "You know, Oliver, I'm a father too. My son lives in Europe, and we see each other once a year, if we're lucky. Sometimes I think he lives in a completely different world, with different values, different priorities. But he is my son. I love him and respect his choices, even if I don't always understand them." "Would you go to such an event against his will?" He smiled. "I don't know. Maybe. Sometimes we need to do what we think is right, even if others don't agree." It wasn't a direct answer, but in a way he supported me. Back at home, I took another look at the corporate information sheet. Riverview Hotel, 19 o'clock, next Friday. The decision had been made. I'm going to this corporate party, not to make a scene or lecture on morality, just to be there to support my son in his big moment, even if he doesn't want to show more to myself than to him or anyone else that I'm not a person to be ashamed of or hide. Let Lucas think I'm outdated, conservative, out of step with the times. Maybe I am, but I'm his father, and I have a right to be proud of him, even if he's not proud of me. The whole day before the corporate party, I was on pins and needles. I checked my suit twice, shined my shoes, shaved my face thoroughly, leaving only a neat gray beard. The mirror reflected an older but still sturdy man with a straight back and an anxious look. I confess I couldn't remember the last time I'd been so anxious. The clock read 16:30. It was still 2.5 hours before the event started, but I decided to leave early. I didn't want to be late, and traffic in downtown Wapton on a Friday night was a regular occurrence. Before I left, I took another look at Rose's picture on the dresser. "You'd say I was doing something stupid, right?" I asked the still image. "That you should respect your son's boundaries. You've always been wiser than me." I thought she smiled a little wider, but it was surely a play of light. I hailed a cab. I didn't want to take any chances with parking downtown. The driver, a young guy with a tattoo on his neck, gave me a curious look. "On a date, sir?" he asked, noticing my dressy appearance. "Corporate," I answered dryly. "Oh, cool. What's the party in honor of?" "It's an award. My son's getting an award." "Wow!" The kid was genuinely thrilled. "You must be proud of him." "Yes," I said, looking out the window. "Proud." The Riverview Hotel was much more chic than I'd expected. The gleaming glass facade, the red carpet, the doormen in immaculate uniforms. I felt out of place as soon as I stepped out of the cab. "May I help you, sir?" the doorman asked as I hesitantly stopped at the entrance. "I'm here for a TechLink corporate event," I said, trying to sound confident. "Crystal Conference Hall, 2nd floor," he nodded. "The elevator is to the right of the reception." The spacious hotel lobby was crowded. Business people with briefcases, tourists with suitcases, waiters with trays. I headed for the elevators, feeling invisible amidst the bustle. As I reached the 2nd floor, I saw a sign with the name Crystal and an arrow. Following the corridor, I came to the double doors where a young woman stood with a clipboard in her hands. "Good evening," she smiled. "Your name?" "Oliver Wainwright," I answered. "I'm Lucas Wainwright's father." She ran her finger down the list on the clipboard, frowned. "I'm sorry, I don't see you on the guest list." "I wasn't officially invited," I admitted, "but my son is receiving an award today, and I'd like to attend." The woman hesitated. "I need to clarify. Just a moment." She stepped back and said something quietly to the man in the suit standing at the door. He nodded and came toward me. "Mr. Wainwright, right?" he asked. "I'm Michael Dorset, the event organizer. I'm afraid we have a strict guest list." "I understand," I interrupted. "But I'm the father of the man you're honoring today. Isn't there room for me?" He hesitated, looking at my old-fashioned but impeccably pressed suit. "All right," he said at last. "I'll make an exception for you, but I must warn you that all seats are allocated by name card." "I can stand," I assured him. "I just want to see my son honored." Michael sighed and signaled to the girl with the clipboard. She handed me a guest badge. "Thank you," I thanked her sincerely. The crystal room lived up to its name. Crystal chandeliers, mirrored panels on the walls, sparkling dishes on round tables covered with snow-white tablecloths. A small stage with a podium, microphone, and projector was set up in the center of the room. The guests were just beginning to arrive. Men in impeccable suits, women in elegant evening dresses, all so confident, so modern. I felt out of place again, but reminded myself why I'd come. I chose a spot against the wall where I could see the stage well, but where I was less visible. I didn't want to confront Lucas right away. I wanted to watch first, to observe. The room gradually filled up. Waiters were serving champagne and canapés. Classical music played softly. I took a glass from the tray of a passing waiter, but only pretended to drink. I wanted to keep a clear head, and then I saw him. Lucas entered the room, accompanied by a tall man with brown hair. They were talking animatedly, and Lucas was laughing in a way I hadn't seen in years. Abigail wasn't with them, which surprised me a little. I instinctively retreated deeper into the shadows, not yet ready for the encounter. I wanted to observe my son, to see him in this environment, among colleagues he thought would find me out of place. Lucas looked beautiful, confident, elegant, in a perfectly fitting gray suit. Colleagues came up to him, shaking his hand, congratulating him. He smiled, nodded, thanked them. The man he'd walked in with stayed close the whole time, occasionally putting a hand on Lucas's shoulder in a gesture that seemed a little too intimate for a mere co-worker. A few minutes later, Michael Dorset came up to me with a glass in his hand. "Is everything all right, Mr. Wainwright?" he asked. "Is there anything I can do for you?" "I'm fine, thank you," I replied. "I'm just waiting for the right moment to approach my son." "I understand," he nodded. "Lucas is a very valuable member of our company. His user interface manuals have revolutionized the industry." I felt a surge of pride. "He's always been a talented writer," I said. "Back in high school." "There he was," Michael interrupted me, looking over my shoulder. I turned around and saw Lucas walking straight toward us. He hadn't noticed me yet, his eyes focused on Michael. "Michael, did you see—" He started, and then he stopped when he saw me. His face changed as if a door had slammed shut. "Dad? What are you doing here?" Michael looked from Lucas to me and back again. I think I'll leave you two alone," he said, and walked away quickly. We were alone, looking at each other. "I came to support you," I said, "to congratulate you on your award. I told you not to come." His voice was so full of contained anger that I could almost physically feel it. "I made it clear I didn't want you here." "I'm your father, Lucas. Is my presence at your triumph so terrible?" "That's not the point." He looked away, clearly afraid of being overheard. "Look, this is not the time or place for this conversation. Please leave." I'm not going to make a scene, I assured him. I'll just sit quietly, watch the ceremony, and then leave. You won't even notice me. I already did, he hissed. And so did Hayden. Hayden? I asked him again. The man you walked in with? Lucas tensed even more. Yes, my co-worker. Look, Dad, I don't mean to be rude, but that's when Hayden walked up to us. He was even more attractive up close. Tall, trim, with expressive brown eyes and a pleasant smile. He was about 35 and he held himself with that casual elegance that only comes from nature. Lucas, James is there to discuss your speech in front of... He stopped talking when he saw me. Oh, I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt. It's okay, Lucas replied tensely. Hayden, this is my dad, Oliver. Dad, this is Hayden Pierce, my co-worker. There was that hesitation before the word co-worker again. I extended my hand. Nice to meet you, Hayden. I've heard a lot about the company where my son works. It was a lie. Lucas almost never talked about his work, but I wanted to be polite. Hayden shook my hand. He had a firm, confident handshake. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Wainwright. Lucas mentions you sometimes. Something in his tone, in the way he looked at Lucas. It was more than collegial sympathy. I started to guess, but I pushed the thought away. No, that's impossible. Lucas is married to Abigail. They have a daughter. Where's Abigail? I asked. I thought she'd be with you tonight. Lucas and Hayden exchanged quick glances. She had an important court case, Lucas answered. She couldn't make it. Something in his voice told me that wasn't the whole truth. And Lilith? I continued. Is she here? Of course not, Lucas answered sharply. It's an adult evening event. She's with the babysitter. There was an awkward pause. Hayden tried to smooth it over. Lucas worked hard on the project that was being honored today. His contribution was invaluable. I'm sure he has, I nodded. Lucas has always been. Dad, my son interrupted me. Hayden and I need to talk to James before the ceremony. Would you mind? Sure, I said, trying to hide my resentment. I won't get in the way. Good luck at the ceremony. Lucas nodded, not looking me in the eye, and he and Hayden walked away. I noticed Hayden lightly touch Lucas's back, guiding him. The gesture was so possessive. And then it hit me. The way they looked at each other. The way they held each other close. The way Lucas avoided the word co-worker, like it didn't quite describe their relationship. Was my son? No, that's impossible. He's married with a kid. I would know. Rose would know. We would have noticed. Or wouldn't we? I found a vacant chair against the wall and sat down, trying to collect my thoughts. I remembered how Lucas had always been close to his mother, but kept his distance from me. How he tensed up when I talked about real manly activities. How he avoided talking about his personal life until he met Abigail. Abigail. Their marriage always struck me as cold, formal. I put it down to both of them being ambitious, career-focused people. But what if it was something else? The ceremony began. The host, an energetic middle-aged man, welcomed the guests and began to introduce the nominees in various categories. I listened half listening, continuing to watch Lucas and Hayden, who sat at a table in the front row. They barely spoke to each other, but occasionally exchanged glances that said more than words. Time passed. Awards were given. Speeches were made. Finally, the host announced, and now the most prestigious award of the evening, for innovative approach in technical documentation. This year it goes to Lucas Wainwright for his revolutionary intuitive interface series of manuals. The hall erupted in applause. Lucas stood up and headed toward the stage. Hayden applauded the loudest, keeping his eyes on my son. Lucas walked up on stage, accepted his award, a crystal statuette in the shape of an open book, and stood in front of the microphone. He looked so confident, so professional. Not at all like the boy who was once afraid to speak in front of the class. "Thank you all for this honor," he began. "I would like to thank TechLink for this opportunity, my team for their support and inspiration." As I listened to him speak, I was overwhelmed with pride. My son, my boy, so successful, so eloquent, and at the same time so foreign, so distant. "A special thanks to Hayden Pierce," Lucas continued, "whose ideas and support have been invaluable at every stage of this project." Hayden smiled and nodded slightly. Their gazes met at that moment, and I saw something in Lucas's eyes that I'd never noticed when he looked at Abigail. Love. Real, deep love. It was like a punch in the gut. All the pieces of the puzzle suddenly fit together. My son is living a double life, married to a woman he doesn't love, hiding his true feelings, his true nature, and his greatest fear is that I, his father, will find out. I felt a lump come up in my throat. Why? Why couldn't he tell me the truth? Was I so horrible, so intolerant that my own son was afraid of my reaction? And finally, "I'd like to thank my family for their patience and understanding," Lucas finished. "Thank you all. Family. What family? The fake marriage to Abigail? Or Hayden, whom he loved but couldn't admit to publicly?" The audience applauded again. Lucas came down from the stage and Hayden met him at the foot of the stairs. They didn't hug, didn't kiss, that would have been too explicit. But in the way Hayden squeezed Lucas's hand, the way they looked at each other, I saw everything I needed to see. I was overwhelmed with emotion. Resentment at my son for not trusting me. Anger at myself for creating an atmosphere where he couldn't be himself. Confusion that his whole life that I thought I knew turned out to be an illusion. The host announced a short break before the final part of the evening. Guests began to get up, heading for the bar or the foyer. I stood up too, not quite sure what I was going to do. I wanted to walk over to Lucas, talk to him, tell him. What? That I understood, that I didn't care, that I just wanted him to be happy. But before I could make a move, the host took the microphone again. "Before we go any further, let me once again congratulate our grand prize winner, Lucas Wainwright. Lucas, perhaps you would like to add something to your speech?" It was an unplanned moment and Lucas looked surprised, but he walked up on stage with a smile and took the microphone. "I thought I had said it all," he joked, causing laughter in the audience. "But now that I've been given another moment of fame, something inside me broke. Maybe it was the accumulated resentment. Maybe it was the shock of discovery. Maybe it was just the desire to be heard at least once. I didn't realize how I'd ended up next to the stage." "Lucas," I said loudly, drawing the attention of my son and everyone in the room. "I want to say a few words." Lucas's face changed. There was horror in his eyes, the very thing he'd feared when he'd said I'd embarrass him at the party. "Dad, not now," he hissed, leaning toward me. But it was too late. The host, apparently deciding it was part of the program, held out a second microphone to me with a smile. "Ladies and gentlemen, the father of our laureate." I took the microphone. The hall fell silent. Hundreds of eyes looked at me, curious, surprised, wary. Lucas stood beside me, pale, with a frozen smile on his face. "I'm Oliver Wainwright," I began, surprised at how calm my voice sounded. "Lucas's father. I wasn't planning on performing today. To be honest, I wasn't even invited." A whisper ran through the room. Lucas closed his eyes as if that might make me disappear. My son didn't want me to come. He said I would embarrass him, that I was too old-fashioned, too conservative too, out of step with this shiny modern world. I paused, looking directly at Hayden, who was staring at me with an impenetrable expression. And you know what? He was right. I really am old-fashioned. I'm from a generation that believed in certain values, certain norms. I grew up in a world where a lot of things were considered unacceptable, weird, wrong. Lucas twitched, as if about to stop me, but I continued. But there was one thing my son didn't understand. One thing he was afraid to find out. I might be old-fashioned, conservative, even stubborn. But above all, I am his father, and I love him. Always have and always will, no matter what decisions he makes in his life, no matter who he chooses to share it with. Lucas froze, looking at me with widened eyes. Today was the first time I'd seen my son truly happy in a long time. And you know what? It's not because of the award. It's because of the man sitting there. I pointed to Hayden. The man he loves, but he's afraid to admit it publicly. Afraid because he thinks people like me will never understand. There was dead silence in the room. Lucas's face was a mask of shock and horror. I didn't come here today to embarrass my son, though I'm afraid that's what I'm doing right now. I came to support him, to congratulate him on his well-deserved award, and to tell him that I'm proud of him, not just for his professional accomplishments, but for his courage to live in a world that doesn't always understand or accept. I turned to Lucas, looking him straight in the eye. Son, I know you're not living the life you want to live. I know that your marriage to Abigail isn't what it seems, and I know you feared my reaction more than anything else. But let me tell you this. You are my son, and nothing will change that. Nothing will change my love for you. I saw tears glisten in Lucas's eyes. It was a revelation that no one had expected. Not the guests, not his colleagues, not Lucas himself. And I realized that I had truly embarrassed him, though not in the way he'd feared. There was a deafening silence in the room. Even the air conditioner seemed to stop making noise. Hundreds of eyes glanced back and forth between me and Lucas, who froze with a look on his face like he'd been punched in the face. Hayden was the first to break the stupor. He stood up and walked briskly toward the stage where Lucas and I were standing. I think we should all take a break, he said loudly, faking a smile. Family moments are better experienced in private, aren't they? The host, confused and bewildered, hastily agreed. Yes, of course. We'll take a half-hour break, ladies and gentlemen. The buffet in the foyer is open. The guests began to rise from their seats, talking in whispers. Many cast curious glances at us. Hayden gently took the microphone from my hands and placed it on the table. Mr. Wainwright, he said quietly but firmly, I think we should talk somewhere else. Lucas seemed to wake up from his stupor. His face, which had just been pale as a sheet, was now flushed with anger. Why? He hissed, looking me straight in the eye. Why did you do it? I wanted to answer, but the words stuck in my throat. What could I say? That I wanted to support him? That I thought I was doing a better job? How could I explain an impulse I didn't fully understand myself? Hayden took the initiative again. Not here. Let's go. He led us across the hall to a side exit that led to a small meeting room. There were leather chairs around a long table and a projector screen on the wall. Hayden closed the door and turned to us. Now we can talk. Lucas immediately exploded. Talk? What is there to talk about? He just ruined my life. He turned to me, his eyes glistening with rage and unshed tears. Do you realize what you've done? Do you? I swallowed the lump in my throat. Lucas, I didn't mean to. You didn't mean to. He laughed bitterly. You went on stage in front of all my coworkers, in front of the company's management, in front of partners and clients, and you basically came out for me. You revealed something I've kept secret for years, and you're telling me you didn't want to? I thought, no, you didn't. He interrupted me. You never think about the consequences. You always think you know best, that your opinion is more important than any boundaries, any respect for other people's choices. Every word he said was like a slap in the face. The worst part is, he was right. I really didn't think about the consequences. I was overcome with emotion and acted impulsively, selfishly. Son, I began again, I realize what I did was wrong, but believe me, I didn't mean to hurt you. Just what? Lucas crossed his arms over his chest. Just decided that your need to speak out was more important than my life, my career, My safety? Hayden walked over to Lucas and put a hand on his shoulder. Let's try to talk calmly. Your father just didn't seem to understand the whole situation. Lucas turned to him. Hayden, you don't understand. Everyone knows now. Everyone. James, Michael, the clients from Indianapolis. He ran his fingers through his hair. God, what's going to happen to Abigail now? Lilith? I listened to him and realized how complex the web my son lived in was. How fragile was the balance I'd just shattered. Lucas, I said quietly, I didn't know. I really didn't know how serious it was. Of course you didn't, he grinned bitterly. Because you never asked. You never took any real interest in my life. You just jumped to conclusions based on your assumptions. Those words hurt me because there was some truth to them. I really hadn't always been as interested in my son's life as I should have been. I want to understand now, I said. Tell me. Help me understand. Lucas shook his head. It's too late. It's too late. Hayden intervened again. Maybe we should explain the situation to your father. He already knows the main thing, and maybe a full understanding will help him realize the consequences of his actions. Lucas looked at Hayden for a long moment, then sighed heavily and sank into one of the chairs. Okay, he said. You want to know the truth, Dad? Here it is. Yes, I'm gay. Always have been. I realized it in high school, but I kept quiet because, well, you know how you were about these things. I opened my mouth to object, but I didn't. He was right. I did have conservative views on the subject, especially in those years. Then there was college, Lucas continued. There I could be myself, at least among close friends. But when I came back to Wapeton, I realized that was impossible here. Not in this town, not in this environment. He glanced at Hayden and he nodded, encouraging him to continue. I met Abigail at a book club. We became friends. She wasn't exactly up to Wapeton standards either. She's asexual, you know what that means? I nodded, though, to be honest, I didn't fully understand. She's not sexually attracted to men or women, Lucas explained, and it was hard for her to find a partner who would accept that, and she'd always wanted a child, but she didn't want a traditional relationship. He paused, as if gathering his thoughts. Abigail and I made a sort of pact, a marriage of convenience, if you will. I was getting a cover, a respectable family life that protected me from suspicion and questions. She was getting married status, which in our conservative town still matters, especially in the legal circles where she works. We were also both getting the opportunity to raise a child, Lilith. Lilith? Adopted? I asked, remembering her resemblance to Abigail. Yes, Lucas nodded. But we'd done the paperwork as if she were Abigail's biological daughter. The birth certificate lists me as the father. Abigail is a wonderful mother, and I'm trying to be a good father. We love and care for Lilith. It's not fake, Dad. It's a real family, just, unconventional. I was digesting what I was hearing, trying to put it together in my head. My son, my daughter-in-law, my granddaughter. It wasn't what it seemed, and yet, at the same time, it was all real. And Hayden? I asked, looking at the man who was now standing next to Lucas, as if protecting him. Lucas looked at Hayden with a tenderness that was impossible to ignore. We've been together for 3 years, he said. We met at a conference in Chicago. He moved to Wapeton for me, though here he has to play the role of just a colleague and friend. It's not the most comfortable situation, Hayden spoke for the first time, but Lucas is worth it. Does Abigail know about you? I asked. Of course, Lucas answered. She knew from the beginning. What's more, she and Hayden get along well. They often study with Lilith together when I'm at work. I tried to imagine this strange construct, a husband who wasn't really a husband, a wife who wasn't really a wife, a lover who was just a co-worker in public. And in the midst of it all, a little girl, my granddaughter, who is not even my blood relative, but whom I loved with all my heart. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Was I so horrible that you were afraid of my reaction? Lucas looked at me tiredly. What would your reaction have been, Dad? Tell me honestly. If I had come to you 10 years ago and said, Dad, I'm gay and I'm going to live with a man, what would you have said? I wanted to say I would have accepted it, supported it, but that would have been a lie, and we both knew it. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe it would have been hard for me to accept it right away. But you're my son, and I— Exactly, he interrupted me. You don't know. And I didn't know either. I couldn't risk it. Not in Wapeton, not with my job, not with my plans for the future. But now, thanks to your father, that's all changed, Hayden said with a hint of bitterness in his voice. I lowered my head, feeling the weight of my guilt. Lucas, I realized what I did was terrible. I didn't think about the consequences, acted impulsively. But maybe it's not all that bad. Maybe people will understand and accept. Lucas laughed, but there was no mirth in his laugh. You don't know this company, Dad. You don't know this town. Hayden and I were planning a move to Chicago next year where we could live openly. Abigail agreed to move with us for Lilith's sake. We had a plan, a plan that you just ruined. I felt the ground slipping away from under my feet. I really didn't think. I didn't realize how serious the consequences could be. I could talk to people, I suggested desperately. Explain that it was a misunderstanding, that you were joking, that you're out of your mind? Lucas shook his head. No, Dad. The train's gone. The cat's out of the bag. Pick any metaphor you want. You can't take it back. The door to the room opened and Michael Dorset, the event organizer, walked in. Pardon the intrusion, he said, but the guests are waiting for the ceremony to continue. Lucas, will you be able to— Lucas straightened up, gathering his strength. Yes, of course, Michael. I'll be right there. Michael gave me a disapproving look and walked out. Lucas turned to Hayden. I have to get back. Are you coming with me? Hayden nodded. Sure, always. That simple exchange of phrases told me more about their relationship than hours of explanation could. They were a real couple, supporting each other in times of need. Lucas headed for the door, but I stopped him. Son, please, tell me what I can do, how I can undo what I've done. He turned around, and in his eyes I saw a mixture of anger, exhaustion, and, worst of all, frustration. Nothing, Dad. You've done enough already. Now we have to deal with the consequences. Can we talk later? I asked. I'll come over to your house, and you and Abigail and I can talk it over. No, he cut me off. Not now. Maybe not any time soon. I need time to deal with this mess you've made. And I don't want to see you until I'm ready. Lucas. Just go away, Dad, he said tiredly. Please. You've done enough for today. With those words, he left the room. Hayden paused for a moment. I understand that you meant well, Mr. Wainwright, but sometimes good intentions have disastrous consequences. Lucas is strong, he can handle it, but he's going to need time. Do you love him? I asked, not knowing why it was suddenly so important. Hayden looked at me seriously. More than anything in the world, and I would do anything to protect him. Even from his own father if I have to. He walked out, leaving me alone in the empty conference room. I sat there for a while trying to realize the magnitude of what I'd done. Through the wall I could hear the muffled sounds of the resumed ceremony, laughter, applause, music. Life went on, even though my son's world had just been turned upside down. Finally, I stood up and walked out into the hallway. I didn't want to go back into the auditorium. Lucas had made it clear he didn't want to see me. I headed for the exit, but stopped at the large windows in the foyer overlooking the city at night. Wopeton spread out before me, lit by thousands of lights. The city where I had lived my entire life. The city I had considered my home, but which, as it turned out, was so hostile to my own son that he was forced to live a lie. I thought about how many others like Lucas hide their true selves for fear of social stigma, of losing their jobs, of rejection from loved ones. How many parents like me don't truly know their children because they've created an atmosphere where kids are afraid to be themselves? Footsteps were heard behind me. I turned around and saw Michael Dorset. "Mr. Wainwright," he said dryly, "I think you'd better leave. Your presence makes things awkward." "Yes, of course," I nodded. "I'll be on my way. Just please tell me, how's Lucas? Is he okay?" Michael paused as if deciding whether to answer. He's a professional. He's finishing the ceremony like nothing happened. But I think you realize that doesn't mean he's okay. "Yes, I do," I sighed. "Tell him." "No, don't tell him anything. I'll leave." I headed for the elevator, feeling Michael's eyes on me. In the lobby of the hotel, I went to the receptionist's desk and asked for a cab. "Of course, sir," the girl smiled. "The cab will be here in 10 minutes. You can wait in the lobby bar." I thanked her and headed for the bar, but stopped when I saw a group of people who were obviously guests of the corporate event. They were still wearing their badges. I didn't want to risk running into someone who would recognize me. Instead, I went outside and waited for a cab under the hotel's visor. The night was chilly, but I didn't feel cold. A fire of shame and remorse burned inside me. I imagined Lucas standing in front of all those people now, trying to maintain his dignity after his father had publicly revealed his biggest secret, like Hayden sitting in the audience, in the crosshairs of prying eyes. How somewhere across town, Abigail is probably already receiving texts or calls from those who were at the corporate party. And Lilith, my innocent granddaughter, who was innocent of anything, but whose life could also change because of my rash act. The cab pulled up, and I gave the driver my address. I stared out the window the whole way, but I couldn't see the city. Lucas's face, contorted with pain and anger, was in front of me. At home, the first thing I did was check my phone, hoping Lucas would call or at least text me. But the screen was blank. I hadn't expected otherwise, but I still felt a pang of disappointment. I sat back in my chair without turning on the light and sat like that for hours, reliving the events of the evening over and over again, analyzing where I'd taken a wrong turn, at what point I'd let my emotions override my common sense. Then I remembered Lucas's words, "The plan you just ruined." They had a plan, a carefully thought out and calibrated plan. They were going to move to Chicago, start a new life where they could be themselves, and I ruined it. It was well past midnight when I pulled out my phone and texted Lucas. "I know you don't want to talk to me right now, and I understand. I just want to say that I am immensely sorry for what I did. I acted impulsively and selfishly without thinking about the consequences. If there is anything I can do to help, please let me know. I love you, son." I didn't expect a response and didn't get one. Putting the phone down, I finally went to the bedroom and lay down without undressing. Sleep didn't come. I lay staring at the ceiling and thought about how I had ruined my son's life with one rash act. In the morning, I was awakened by a phone call. I grabbed the phone, hoping it was Lucas, but the screen showed Abigail's name. I froze for a moment, not knowing what to expect, then answered, "Hello?" "Oliver." Her voice sounded cold but calm. "We need to talk." "Yes, of course." I sat up on the bed. "Abigail, I'm so sorry about what," I said. "Not on the phone," she interrupted me. "Come over to our house at 12. Lucas will be at work so we can talk without him." "Okay," I agreed. "I'll be there. And Oliver," she added before she hung up, "what you did yesterday, I'm not sure Lucas will ever be able to forgive you for that." The line went dead, leaving me alone with the bitter realization of the truth of her words. It's been a week since corporate, the longest week of my life. Talking to Abigail that day was hard but sobering. She didn't yell, didn't accuse, just explained the consequences of my behavior with a cold clarity that was worse than any anger. The company had decided to transfer Lucas to the Chicago branch earlier than planned. officially as a promotion, but actually to avoid embarrassment. Hayden was transferring too. Abigail tendered her resignation from her law firm and began looking for a job in Chicago. "We were going to do it in a year," she said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. Lilith had to finish the school year. I wanted to finalize current cases. Now, everything is happening in a hurry and everyone around me is asking questions. I tried to apologize, offered to help, but she just shook her head. "You shouldn't be around when we're going through all this. Lucas is too angry, too hurt. He needs time and space." "How much time?" I asked. She looked at me pityingly. "I don't know, Oliver. Maybe a lot." I asked about Lilith, and her look softened a little. "She's asking about you. We told her that the adults had a little fight, but it wasn't her fault. She doesn't understand what's going on, and that's for the best." In parting, Abigail said, "You're not a bad person, Oliver. Just a man from another time who has failed to adapt to change. But your actions have consequences, and they're consequences we all have to live with." Now, sitting in my empty house on a Saturday morning, I was going over that conversation in my mind. There hadn't been a word or a text from Lucas in a week. I knew from a neighbor whose daughter worked at the same company that there had been rumors in the office about Lucas's promotion and transfer, but no one had mentioned the scandal at the awards ceremony. Apparently, the people there appeared to be quite tactful. I grabbed a photo album off the shelf, an old one with a worn leather cover. Rose always made sure that all the family photos were neatly signed and arranged in chronological order. The first pages are our wedding, then Lucas's birth, his first steps, the first day of school. Here's Lucas, about 10 years old, with the model airplane we put together. His smile is so genuine, so open. When did that smile disappear? When did that wall grow between us? I remembered how he would come home from school, sometimes depressed, and Rose would ask what was wrong. "Nothing, Mom," he'd always answer, but I could see that something was wrong. I wrote it off to normal teenage problems, to shyness. It never occurred to me that he might be struggling with something deeper, more fundamental. And then college. The distance between us grew physically and emotionally. He would come over for the holidays, but always seemed somehow detached, as if his thoughts were somewhere far away. I thought it was a natural process of growing up, of separating from my parents. I didn't realize that he just couldn't be himself around me. When he introduced Abigail to us, I was overjoyed. I thought my son had finally settled down, found a nice girl. Their relationship seemed a little strange to me. It lacked the warmth, the tension that usually comes between lovers. But I decided that they were just reserved people, not inclined to public displays of affection. Their wedding was modest, no big deal. I remember toasting to the happiness of the newlyweds and the strained smile on Lucas's face. At the time, I thought he was just nervous, like all groomsmen. Now I realized that behind his smile was the pain of a man forced to play a role to conform to the expectations of society and his father. And then there was Lilith. When Lucas and Abigail announced they were adopting a child, I was surprised they'd only been married for a year and both had careers, but they insisted they were ready. I now know that Lilith was part of their plan from the beginning. Not a cover, not a deception, but a genuine desire to start a family, albeit an unconventional one. Closing the album, I walked to the window. The day was clear, sunny. Cars drove down the street. People went about their business. A normal Saturday in Wapeton. And here I stood, in a house that suddenly felt even emptier because now I knew I had lost not only my wife, but my son as well. The ringing of the doorbell snapped me out of my musings. I wasn't expecting visitors, and who would come to my house on a Saturday morning? A neighbor who needed help with her electrical wiring? Or maybe the mailman with a package? Opening the door, I froze with surprise. Standing on the doorstep was Lilith, my 8-year-old granddaughter, wearing a pink jacket and carrying a backpack behind her back. "Hi, Grandpa," she said, as if nothing had happened. Can I come over? I looked around, looking for Abigail or Lucas, but the street was empty. Lilith? What are you doing here? Are you alone? She nodded. I came on the bus. My mom thinks I'm at Sophia's art class. I was shocked. An 8-year-old girl made it across town by herself, fooling her parents. Lilith, do your parents know where you are? She shook her head. No, they won't let me see you. They say you did something bad and now we have to move to Chicago. But I don't want to move without saying goodbye to you. My heart ached. I let her into the house and immediately reached for the phone. I have to call your mom. She's probably worried. No! Lilith grabbed my hand. Please don't call. My mom will take me away and never let me come back. Class ends at 12:30. We have time to talk. I hesitated. On the one hand, I couldn't not tell Abigail where her daughter was. On the other hand, Lilith was right. If I called now, it would be the last time we'd see each other. Okay, I said finally. We'll talk, and then I'll take you home and explain everything to your mom. Lilith glowed. Thank you, Grandpa. I have cookies. She pulled a bag of cookies out of her backpack. I baked them myself with my mom. We sat down in the kitchen. I poured juice for her and coffee for myself. Lilith ate the cookies with gusto and chatted about school, about her friend Sophia, about the new music teacher who let them play modern songs, not just classical. She was so normal. Despite the abnormality of her parents' situation, despite the impending move, despite the secret visit to the grandfather her parents had forbidden her to see, she was just a child enjoying life. Grandpa, she suddenly said seriously, what did you do? Why is Papa so angry with you? I didn't know how to answer. What can you explain to an 8-year-old about the complexities of adult life, about secrets, lies, and unexpected discoveries? I made a mistake, honey, I said finally. I said something I shouldn't have said, and I upset your daddy. What did you say? It's hard to explain. It's about adult things. Lilith frowned. They always say adult things when something is interesting. I smiled involuntarily. You know, you're right. We adults often use that as an excuse. But some things are really hard to understand until you grow up. I think I understand more than you think, she said with that childlike wisdom that sometimes amazes adults. I know that Daddy loves Uncle Hayden differently than he loves other uncles. He especially does. I froze with a cup of coffee in my hand. You know? She nodded. Of course. They always smile at each other and sometimes hold hands when they think I can't see. Also, Uncle Hayden lives in the apartment next to our house, but he actually sleeps in the guest room a lot. Only, it's not really a guest room because that's where his clothes and books are. I was amazed. The kid was seeing things that I, the grown man, Lucas's father, hadn't noticed in years. And that doesn't surprise you. Surprised? I asked cautiously. Lilith shrugged. No. Sophia has 2 moms and no one is surprised. Why can't I have a dad and an uncle who love each other? Such simple logic, such an unbiased perception of the world. I felt myself blushing with shame. The child understood and accepted the situation better than I did. Did you know you're moving to Chicago soon? I asked, changing the subject. She nodded, suddenly sad. Yes. Mom said we'll have a new house there, a new school, new friends. But I don't want new friends. I want old ones. And I don't want to leave you, Grandpa. My heart ached. I don't want you to leave either, sweetheart. But sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do because it's best for everyone. But why would it be better? I won't be better off without you. I didn't know what to say. How do you explain to a child the complex social norms, the prejudices, the fears that govern the lives of adults? You know, I said, Chicago is a beautiful city. There are a lot of interesting museums, parks. There's Lake Michigan, so big that it looks like the sea. You'll like it there. Will you come to visit? I sighed. I don't know, honey. It's not just up to me. Your parents would have to allow it. Lilith thought for a moment, then said firmly, I'll ask them. I'll tell them I won't go to Chicago if they won't let you come." I smiled at her childish naivete. "It doesn't quite work that way, Lilith, but I appreciate your willingness to help." We talked for another hour or so. Lilith showed me her drawings, told me about the books she was reading, asked me about my work as an electrician. I almost forgot about the time until I looked at my watch. It was almost 12. "We should go," I said. "I have to take you home." Lilith was upset. "But Mom will be mad if she finds out I was at your place." "We can't lie to your mom," I said firmly. "It's not right. I'll explain to her that you came by yourself and I'll take the blame." She reluctantly agreed. I hailed a cab. My old car was being repaired and we drove to Lucas and Abigail's house. On the way, Lilith held my hand and chatted about how we'd communicate when she moved to Chicago. "I'll learn how to use a computer and we'll talk on video calls. And I'll write you real letters, not emails, but on paper. And you'll write to me too, okay?" "Sure," I promised, though I wasn't sure Lucas and Abigail would let that happen. When the cab pulled up in front of their house, I saw Abigail standing on the porch, talking on the phone. When she saw us, she interrupted her conversation and quickly walked to the car. "Lilith," she exclaimed as she opened the cab door. "Where have you been?" I called Sophia, and her mom said there was no class today. Lilith lowered her head guiltily. "I'm sorry, Mom. I wanted to see my grandfather before I left." Abigail looked at me, and I could see the cold fury in her eyes. "Oliver, you should have called me immediately." "I was going to take her home and explain," I said. "She came to me on her own. I didn't invite her." "It wasn't Grandpa's fault," Lilith intervened. "It was all my idea. Please don't be mad at him." Abigail sighed. "Lilith, go inside. I need to talk to Grandfather alone." Lilith gave me a hug. "Bye, Grandpa. Don't forget the letters." "I won't," I promised, hugging her back. When Lilith had gone inside, Abigail turned to me. "Oliver, I understand that you want to communicate with your granddaughter, but after everything that's happened, you need to respect our boundaries." "I do," I said. "But she came on her own and I couldn't just send her back alone. She got to me on the bus, Abigail." An 8-year-old girl crossed the city alone. Abigail turned pale. "What? On a bus? Oh my God." She covered her eyes for a moment. "Okay, thank you for bringing her. But in the future, if it happens again, call me right away." "Will there be a future?" I asked her bluntly. "Will you let me see her after you move in?" Abigail hesitated. "I don't know, Oliver. It's not up to me alone. Lucas right now, he's very angry, disappointed, betrayed." "I understand," I nodded. "But it's not Lilith's fault. Don't deprive her of her grandfather because of my mistake." "We'll talk about this later," she said evasively. "Right now, we all needed time." I knew I couldn't get more out of her. "When are you moving?" I asked. "In 2 weeks," she answered. "Lucas has already found a house, and I'm flying to Chicago next week to make the arrangements." "I can help with the move," I offered. "Packing, moving furniture." "No," Abigail said firmly. "Thank you, but no. We'll do it ourselves." I nodded, realizing it was useless to insist. "Please tell Lucas that I love him, and that I'm ready to talk when he's ready." "I will," she said, but I could tell from her tone that Lucas wasn't likely to be ready anytime soon, if ever. I got back into the cab and gave the driver my address. Looking at the distant house where my son and his family lived, I had mixed feelings. Sadness at the realization that they would soon be hundreds of miles away, fear that Lucas would never forgive me, and the strange, unexpected relief of no longer having to live a lie, of pretending not to notice the obvious. At home, I sat down at the table and wrote a letter to Lucas. I wasn't going to send it now. It was too early, the wounds too fresh. But I wanted my thoughts and feelings to be recorded so that one day, maybe he would read it and understand. "Dear Lucas," I wrote. "First, I want to apologize again for the other night. I acted selfishly and rashly, not realizing the full consequences of my actions. I destroyed what you had so long and carefully built, and I understand why you are so angry with me. But I want you to know that I'm not mad at you for hiding the truth from me. I understand why you did it. My conservative views, my harsh judgments. I created an atmosphere where you couldn't be yourself. It's my fault, not yours. Today, Lilith came to me. She is so intelligent, so perceptive. She sees and understands more than we adults realize. And she accepts everything with the purity and open-mindedness that only children have. I'm not asking you to forgive me now. Maybe never. I only ask that you be happy, truly happy, without pretense, without fear. And I also ask that you let me stay in Lilith's life, if only from a distance. She doesn't deserve to lose her grandfather because of his stupidity. I have loved you from the first day of your life, and I will love you until the last day of mine. Nothing will change that. Your father, Oliver. Finishing the letter, I set the pen aside and took a deep breath. I don't know if Lucas will ever read those words. I don't know if he'll forgive me. I don't know if I'll ever see him and Lilith again. But I knew one thing. Life goes on, even after the worst mistakes. And my job now was to learn to live with the consequences of my actions, without giving up hope that maybe one day, maybe something would change. For the next 2 weeks, I didn't try to contact Lucas or Abigail, respected their desire to keep their distance. But I did write a letter to Lilith, a real paper letter, as she'd requested, with drawings and a little secret, my new email address, created just for her. If you ever want to write to Grandpa but can't mail a letter, use this address, I wrote. I sent the letter the day before they were to leave. On the day they were to leave, I couldn't stand it and drove to their house. Not to interfere, just to see them one last time, at least from a distance. I parked on a nearby street and watched the movers move boxes and furniture out, Abigail supervising the process, Lilith running around, clearly excited about the journey ahead. I only caught a glimpse of Lucas as he came out of the house with a box in his hands. He looked tired, but determined. Next to him walked Hayden, also laden with stuff. They loaded the boxes into Hayden's car and returned to the house. I didn't try to approach, didn't try to speak, just watched, memorizing, saying goodbye. When the last things were loaded, Abigail and Lilith got into their family minivan, and Lucas and Hayden got into Hayden's car. The doors closed, the engine started, and they drove off, first the minivan, then Hayden's car. I watched them disappear around the corner, and I felt a part of my life leave with them. At home, I found an envelope slipped under the door. Inside was a drawing of Lilith, Lucas, Abigail, Hayden, and me, all holding hands together in the bright sunshine. And on the back, in childish handwriting, it said, "I'll miss you, Grandpa. I'll ask Daddy to have you come visit us for Thanksgiving. Love you, Lilith." I didn't know if her wish would come true. I didn't know if Lucas would let me into their new life even for a short time. But I knew I would wait and hope and do everything I could to earn a second chance. In the meantime, I had to learn to live without illusions, to accept the truth about my son, about his choices, about my mistakes, to begin a new chapter of life, perhaps a lonelier one, but a more honest one. I looked at Lilith's drawing again and smiled. Whatever our relationship with Lucas was, this little girl had created a bridge between us, a bridge that maybe one day would help us find our way back to each other. I hung the drawing on the refrigerator next to Rose's picture. The two most important women in my life, one gone forever, the other was far away but still with me in my heart. Tomorrow I'll write Lilith her first letter to her new address in Chicago, and I'll write every week, even if I don't get a reply, because sometimes love is expressed in patient waiting, in the willingness to accept another as they are, not as you would like them to be. And maybe that was the main lesson of this whole story.